So as Memphis enters the NCAA tournament as somewhere between a 4 and a 6, who do y'all think are the biggest X factors for Memphis to make a deep run in the NCAA tournament?
I mean, I think the big three, you have to really comes down to the big three there with Hagerty, Hunter, and Danger. I mean, I think PJ Carter is an important piece because he's proven that he can just make shots against, you know, from UConn to East Carolina to Tulsa. Like he just makes shots against anybody, and shooting generally translates. So I think he can be an important piece too. I think Rogers has to find his non-conference form at some point if Memphis really wants to make something out of this postseason run. Because what he's doing is fine right now, but I think Memphis still somewhat misses the kind of offense that Colby was providing in the
Yeah,
non-conference schedule.
absolutely.
Now, they've been able to make up for it in other ways, obviously, with Dane improving and PJ Carter getting a bigger role. But I still think Colby Rogers is the most dangerous shooter on this team when he's fully on. And I know the stats don't exactly suggest that, but that's just how I feel. And again, if you're talking like, if you think Memphis is capable of going to, say, the Sweet 16, the Elite Eight, the Final Four, Colby Rogers has to be a significant part of that. He just
Yeah.
does. So I don't know if there's like one specific X factor because this is such like a team that doesn't really lack it lacks depth. It does. So I think everyone who plays a really integral part of what Memphis does. Like
I think
from Hagerty to Jourdain to everybody. So it's hard to name a specific X factor when every player that's in the rotation feels so important.
I do think I think Colby is very is an X factor to the degree that when he's on and making shots, they're almost unguardable on the offensive side of the ball. Like they're just almost unguardable. Like because you've got so many weapons and you've got such a willing passer out of the post. Did y'all see that post pass that Dane made to the corner to PJ?
Yeah, to Hagerty. Yeah,
I mean,
that was incredible.
that's just dumb. Like your bigs in college are not supposed to be able to do stuff like that. I asked the question in the Discord, when is the last time we saw a big with the footwork and skills in the paint that that Dane Danger has? And somebody said Kenny Lofton Jr., and I agree with that. Um, Kenny was a man child in college basketball. Just the his size and ability, but his footwork and his touch around the rim was just otherworldly. And Dane is right there with in that same place. Like he is so gifted in the post. Um, Dane is such an enigma to me. Not even enigma is the wrong word. Dane is such a unique person to me because he's just so there's a level of comfort. He at this point has surpassed everybody else on the team in terms of the comfortability I feel when he has the ball in his hands. Right? Like if when Penny is running sets specifically for Dane in the post, I feel very comfortable with what the Tigers produced during that time period. More so than I do really anybody else at this point. Even though PJ Haggerty's number 4 in the country in scoring and is a phenomenal shooting 40% plus from the 3-point line, and playing at such a high level. He's a midseason Wooden Award finalist. Like he's just this incredible player. I just feel so comfortable with Dane in the post. In terms of X factor, I remember back in 2008, in that 2008, 2007, 2008 season when Derrick Rose was a freshman and the Tigers were so good, right? Like they were so fantastic all year. And Derrick was he would have these moments where you're just like, holy shit. Like, who is this guy? Right? Like, who is this guy? But it was CDR, it was Joey Dorsey, and it was Antonio Anderson that really kept during the regular season that ship moving along, right? Like CDR was an All-American. CDR
First team.
we forget about Chris Douglas Roberts. Like,
Oh, I mean,
I mean,
Just-
that's
he's a
that's
menace.
what happens when you branch off and become Supreme Bay.
yes.
I don't know.
But we forget how great he was as a basketball player because Derrick Rose was on that team, and Derrick Rose
Yeah.
went on and did what he did, NBA MVP, all that. I just remember conversations being had, and there wasn't Twitter and there wasn't all that kind of stuff back then. So I don't know where I don't know where I saw the conversations, but maybe it was radio.
It was actually the early days of Twitter.
Was it? Well, I wasn't
Yeah.
on it. I wasn't on it. I didn't get on until 2009 or 2010. But I just remember, hearing conversation. Well, will Derek come back? Like, will he come back? Because
That was a conversation back then?
He's had a good year, but he hasn't had a great year. Like, will he come back? And it wasn't until the postseason, where in the postseason, in the conference tournament and in the NCAA tournament, he went ballistic.
Yeah,
and
he
it was
became different.
And it was his team. It was his team moving forward. And by the time the NCAA tournament was done, Derrick Rose was firmly planted as the number 1 draft pick in the draft, and he went pro. That kind of how the story played itself out. I told that story to say the X factor for me is PJ Hagerty, because PJ Hagerty is the guy that is the one guy on this team that I think has the skill set and is so good that he could literally take the Tigers on his back by himself and move them through the tournament. If he takes his play right here and goes boom up one notch, he becomes that Derrick Rose story arc where he is just put the team on his back and he is like single-handedly willing them to victory throughout the tournament. He is that type of player. Will he do that? I don't know. But if he can do that, the Tigers have a chance to make a real deep run here.
Yeah, I think you talking about PJ he is just an incredible scorer of the basketball. There are just so many moments so many finishes where I think to myself, how in the hell did he make that shot? I just don't understand. How did he find that angle? How did he contort his body to put the ball up on the glass and finish? He is just an incredible college basketball scorer. And the other thing about PJ, he was amazing for Tulsa last year, but he hasn't done it on such a grand stage. And when Memphis makes the NCAA tournament, there's no bigger stage in college basketball than NCAA tournament. None. And so, though I think it's 100% fair for you to say, Kenny, that you don't know if he can replicate or even elevate his game to that next level, because we don't know what he's going to be like on that stage. But at the same time, there's just something about PJ that I feel like he rises to the occasion, that he's going to play his best when the lights are brightest. And I think he's a great shout to be the engine, the driver of the Memphis Tigers when it comes NCAA tournament time. I think for me, for the definition of X factor, for me, I define that as the person that isn't a star. I don't think you can be a star or the best player on your team and be the X factor. Because of course, if you're the best player on the team, if you're Dane or PJ,
that's what I was thinking.
You're going to be incredible. Like, that's why, like, I can't give it to the best dude on the team.
Whatever.
But I hear you. I know.
I did.
I hear you, Kenny.
Screw both of y'all. Both of y'all.
Yeah, screw us. Yeah.
I make my own rules here. No,
yeah, no, for sure. But I think PJ's a hell of a shout, and if Tigers will go as far as PJ takes him, no question. But I said it earlier before we went to break. My X factor is 1,000% Nick Jourdain, just because the inconsistencies that we see from him are so frustrating, because when we see him do all the dirty work, dive for loose balls, get on the glass, make good cuts to the rim, when he just plays really hard and he doesn't get in his head, he is that connecting player that Memphis needs if they're going to have success in the NCAA tournament. Every single successful basketball team needs a guy who's willing to do the dirty work. Every NBA championship team has had that guy. Damn near, I mean, I'm sure damn near every NCAA championship team has had that guy. And Nick Jourdain has to be that guy for this team in order for Memphis to make a deep run in March. Because if he disappears and you get 0 points, 2 rebounds, no blocks, no steals, no assists, and you just get nothing from Nick Jourdain, Memphis will probably lose their first matchup because you got absolutely nothing from him. And that's when Memphis looks its worst, when they get absolutely zero production from Nick. If Memphis gets consistent production from Nick, I'm talking like 5 points, 5 or 6 points, at least 5 rebounds, maybe 2 or 3 assists, maybe a block and a steal a game, just some level of consistent production from Nick, then I think Memphis can go as far as the Stars want to take him after that. So for me, the X factor for this team, it's 1000% Nick, because someone has to do the dirty work to win these types of games in the postseason, and it's got to be Nick. So that's where I'm coming from.
Timo says Jourdain and Cisse's rebounding is an X factor. Getting 10, 15 points combined for them is an X factor. I think that's true. I mean, I do think that there is a level of the certain statistical things that they can do that really impact the Tigers. Like one of the things that we've talked about a lot, that Penny has talked about a lot, in any of his availabilities, is the 2 stats that he really looks at in terms of success for the team is rebounding and points off turnover. Like what's the difference between points off turnover compared to the other team and the rebounding? They have struggled against teams that can out rebound them. They've struggled against teams that are more physical than them. You need Nick Jourdain to be willing to put his nose down there and get a bunch of rebounds like he did tonight. You need Cisse to be down there getting a bunch of rebounds like he did tonight. And if they can add 10 to 15 points combined between the two of them, that is
huge.
That's huge. Right?
Yeah, that's huge. That's why I also love what you said, Roman, because every player playing to their max ability is what Memphis needs to have a deep run, because it's just not that deep of a team. So all of those 8 rotational guys, they just all have to play well. Because if they want to make a deep run, like they could win their first round matchup with, the big 3 just going off. They can win that first round matchup. But then after that is what matters.
Yeah, again, that's why it's so difficult for me to say a certain person who is an X factor, because every player in the rotation feels so intricately important. If I had to give an answer, it's Colby for me.
Yeah,
cool.
It's Rogers, because I just feel like you need his non-conference offense to come back if you want to have a chance. Like I think back to Clemson, I think back to UConn, like those games. I think back to Ole Miss. Those games where Rogers was just so electric that it put Memphis over the top, and they couldn't have won any of those games without him.
Which Maui game was it that he just went off in?
It was UConn.
Oh my God. I'm telling you, when Colby is on and he's hitting shots, they are almost impossible to guard, because you just cannot guard that pass, especially when you have a willing passer from the post. You just cannot guard someone who can make a pass from the lane to the corner 3 and that corner 3 be almost automatic. When that is automatic, it's just, God, it's tough to stop. The reason I'll just go back to PJ Hagerty for a second. The reason I think PJ is such a key factor, X factor for this team for a postseason run, is that it's just like in basketball is such a sport that majority of the time, especially in the postseason, when you have the best player on the floor, you're going to win that game. You see that in NBA, you see that in college, and I think that PJ has that next level for him is one where he proves that he's the best player on the court, no matter who he's playing with, no matter who's on the other side. And it is a very college refs are college refs, and it's a very real thing. There is a level of consideration that refs give the best player on the court when they're out there. They get more calls, they get a better whistle all the way through and through. And
the refs are also going to reward the more physical player. And
100%.
Hagerty is that more often than not.